It's the last call back for another season, and how about two familiar faces? Not something that we've seen in probably years here at UINDY TV, but Caden Colford, and as always now, Jake Helton sitting to my left. It's a blessing to be here back again. We start with some news at home. The volleyball team, who's had a good couple seasons the past few years, a new head coach, and that being Haley Kendall.
Yeah, and this is actually the new athletic director's first hire here at the University of Indianapolis, Kim Pate. We'll see how it pays off, but on paper, it looks like a pretty good decision. Haley Kendall, she's coming from West Florida. She played at Wheeling during her time in college. She won a national championship. She was an All-American. She's also trained quite a few All-Americans while she was at West Florida. So this is a coach, no stranger to winning. She was 76-0 in conference play while in college. That's something you hardly ever see in any sport. So I think this is a great pickup, and I really can't wait to see what the volleyball team does this year.
When you say All-American, it's important to note that that All-American title comes with actually 3 separate distinctions as a middle blocker on her squad. I mean, a team that's accustomed to winning, right? I mean, we saw at one point early on this season, the Hounds went a month straight, at least 13 matches, without losing a single one. And obviously, they had some skids later on in the season, but this is a team that's made the national tournament, that's made the conference tournament multiple times, and you have your eyes set on some hardware early, don't you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely coming in. She's coming from a winning program, and as a coach, you're going to expect to win. But some things to note, they are going to be losing their libero, Ellie Spang. So I would be looking for the transfer portal this year. They did bring in quite a few players this previous year. Obviously, they had senior Sophia Parlanti killing it, literally. So I think that you see this team, they're going to be a little bit new. It's going to be a rebuild, if you will, but new coach, new team, I think we see some new results.
And this is just another puzzle piece in a program overall, a very broad program. You want to talk about UINDY as a whole that just has a history and a habit of winning, volleyball included in that discussion. So when we look at these hires, I feel like there's a certain prestige that comes to playing with the University of Indianapolis. You look at coaches like Coach Frost, you look at Coach Keevers, who year in, year out are playing at a national level. What's it take for volleyball to get on that level?
Well, Coach Kendall, in her short little interview with the sports information team, she said she was very excited to come to UINDY. She loved the energy. Obviously, a much different place than West Florida. If she's here right now, I'd say she's probably not too happy with the weather. But like I said, a new team, you're going to have new faces. You're going to have to build this team. So it might not be a one-year thing. You're going to come in wanting to win. I don't think we see a losing season at all. I think we see them pick up right where they left off. Similar season, if not better, and I would expect another NCAA tournament bid.
That's the hope. And as we talk about cultures here at the University of Indianapolis, the swim team celebrating 29 seniors on Friday, a dual meet that saw the Hounds, well, again, up in the rankings, not only the GLVC, but nationally. We'd like to throw out big congratulations to friends in Adile Becker and Austin Kerr for being recognized this past weekend, and 2 guys that we know as hard workers, and obviously that translates to the pool for some guys that saw, well, you say highs and lows, but this team saw a national championship. They saw national competition at the highest level for 4 straight years, and the swim program breeds winners.
Yeah, and they even sent someone to the Olympics last year. So right now, I actually got the chance to talk to Adile, talk to him about the swim team and their aspirations this year, obviously coming off that national championship. So you look at this right now, the GLVC, we were talking about it before, it's turning into a swim conference. 5 of the top 25 teams come from the GLVC. In order, that's Drury, Indy, McKendree, Lewis, and Missouri S&T. Coming from Adile, Drury's a very talented team, so that's going to be the one to watch out for in the conference championship, but obviously I'm rooting for the Hounds.
Me too. Me too. And that wraps up the news here at home, but as everybody may know, there is a huge game tonight, seeing Notre of South Bend heading down to Atlanta, Georgia to play in the National Football Playoff Final. This is going to be awesome, and they're playing none other than Ohio State. We're going to break down how we got to this final, what the 12-team format looks like, and what we expect in tonight's action. That up next.
there's often a moment when you're helping somebody with math where they just suddenly get over that little barrier and they get it. It's a nice aha moment, and I really like being involved in helping students achieve that moment, and we do get a lot of those here in the tutoring lab.
Now we're back into the meat of it for tonight's game. Notre Dame versus Ohio State. You notice a new face with us, Freddie Hawthorne of UINDY football, wide receiver on the squad, taking a stop by the UINDY studios to talk about this game tonight, the college football new playoff format, and everything about the sport. So I'll open it up for you guys, and we'll start. It was a long road of 12 teams to get to the final two of Notre Dame and Ohio State. I'll start with Freddie. It's the first time that we've seen 12 teams fight their way to the final two. What's your first impression? Any big problems, any big successes that you see first and foremost?
I feel like as a football fan, whenever you have more football towards the end, that's always a good thing.
Right.
There was times where we had teams like Florida State going undefeated and not even getting a chance to compete for a national championship. Obviously with 12 teams now, everyone has the opportunity. You can lose 2 games, you can lose 3 games, you might still have that chance to fight. And then, we all love upsets.
Yeah.
So, that's 12 teams, that's a bigger chance for a team to come out of nowhere and beat, the top dog. Notre Dame, there has been talks about people not expecting them to even make it this far. There's been chances where Notre Dame has been really good and has missed the playoffs. So I feel like this is a great year for them.
And I think you make a good point in bringing in Notre Dame. Jake, does Notre Dame happen any other year besides this year? Because you think their one and only loss, while it was the first game of the season or one of the first to Northern Illinois, I see that really tainting their season. If this was a 4-team playoff, do they still make it?
That's a weird question because I think it has to do with timing. It happened at the beginning of the season. They ended on a 12-game win streak. I think that plays into their favor. They have beaten 7 ranked opponents up until this point, and as we know, strength of schedule plays a pretty big factor into who makes it or who made it into the top 4 teams when it was 4. And so I think that they probably would have given Notre Dame the chance. It was earlier in the season. They had been beating opponents by an average of 40-something points coming into the playoffs. I think they probably would have made it over a Boise State, over Arizona State. There's definitely a couple questions in there with Texas, Oregon, and Ohio State. Would they have been that 4th team? I think there's a good argument for that.
There's also the smaller teams. You bring up Boise State. Now the smaller conferences get some recognition come prime time towards the end of the season. And now you play Division II football with us here. And obviously there is a curve to skill as you step up into Division I, and you have Boise State playing against teams like Ohio State, and we know we love upsets, but is it unrealistic to ever expect a Boise State or an Arizona State to ever knock off one of those teams?
I honestly feel like the huge jump, especially with Power 5 football and Division I football, is the linemen. All of that, the game changes up front. The size up front and the D lineman and the O lineman is what changes things. And when you speak about Boise State, Ashton Jeanty, he was so talented because even against these top-ranked teams, he was still putting up big numbers. But you could still tell that those differences in the conferences mattered. You didn't see Boise State win either of those games, and that just speaks to show that if they do want to be successful, maybe it is time for them to jump over and play somewhere else in a different conference.
And you mentioned Jeanty having the games he did against teams like Oregon. I talk about this game all the time. Jeanty had 3 touchdowns, 250 yards against the number 1 team in the country and still lost.
And they were almost there.
Right?
He carried them almost to the win. So, what you're saying is that's big.
And it's, there's 22 guys on the field at all times. And he was the one guy that really shoved that team into the playoffs. And without the 12-team format, I don't know if you're seeing that at all. And it also gives a chance for those guys, those studs on smaller teams to be noticed on a national level. What does that bring to the picture, Jake?
Well, yeah, I do agree with that. I think it does give them the chance to show themselves. And last year, you probably never would have heard of Ashton Jeanty. Yes, he was close to breaking the records, but there was a Triple Crown receiver that played for San Jose State. Yeah, that's right. He didn't even get the Blitkenhoff, which is supposed to be the best receiver in college football, and Travis Hunter got it. I think it's becoming a little bit of a popularity contest. But I do want to say one thing with this new format. I've been seeing a lot of rumbles about potentially making a small change. Rather than having the top 4 seeds be the top 4 conference champions, allowing the top 5 conference champions to have their auto bids, but reseeding once you pick the top 12 teams. If they would have done that this year, we would have had IU versus Boise State, 8 versus 9. That's a little bit better of a game, same caliber teams. Then the second round, we might not have seen as many blowouts. That's the other thing to keep in mind. Home field advantage, very important, as we found. All 4 home teams won in the first round. And the bye, it might not be as good as people think. All 4 teams that had a first round bye, they lost as well. So we're seeing a pattern in the first one. Obviously, we're going to need a couple more years to see that. But I think that that's pretty telling unless they do make some changes.
And that kind of brings up the negatives, right? I feel like it is stacked against the 12 seed to go do the unthinkable and knock off an Oregon or an Ohio State. But you do see that there is that sliver of a chance, which I think is good in college football for sure. But Jake, you and I, we talked about this playoff format going back a couple weeks before the break, and we actually picked a couple winners who we thought was going to bring it all out. And, well, I was more so playing in the infirmary. My teams, were all busted up. I had actually Georgia and Texas going all the way, and Georgia winning it all. Well, it didn't work out. I actually had IU. That was my first big loss, IU losing to Notre Dame. So my bracket's broken, busted. Jake, yours doesn't look bad. Honestly, when we go back and look at it.
I definitely, going into this, I knew Notre Dame had the easiest path in. That was kind of my thinking. Then you look at Georgia. No Carson Beck. That's kind of their big key on offense. They can't run the ball if they can't pass the ball. Obviously, we saw that they only had 62 yards against Notre Dame. But looking at that other side, I was not expecting Ohio State to come out and do what they did. As a fan, I love to watch it, but I'm also superstitious a little bit, and I did think I was going to jinx them. So I refrained from picking them. However, now looking back, after seeing that first game against Tennessee, I instantly changed my mind. I'm pretty confident Ohio State's going to win this national championship.
And we look at the path, if we go back to the schedule as it lies right now, the path that both of these two teams had to get to the national championship. Well, Freddie, I'll talk to you about it. Ohio State, they played Tennessee, Oregon, and Texas. Oregon and Texas were living in the top 3 this year, whereas Notre Dame, they played a good IU team, a hurt Georgia team, and Penn State. Penn State was really good. But when we say there's levels to this stuff, how do you compare the road for Ohio State to the road for Notre Dame?
When we talk about Oregon, we just have to, think about the fact that Ohio State lost to these guys in the regular season and pretty bad. So for them to make that jump from, taking a whip into a team like this and then to delivering it, on the biggest stage, and you got a guy like Jeremiah Smith who he completely lost his mind that game, and so that's something that Notre Dame has to worry about going into this game. They have a really good secondary. That secondary I think they held Penn State's receivers to 0 catches. Their receivers didn't catch a ball. So, when you look at Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith, and then you look at Notre Dame's defensive back in their room, that's going to be a really good matchup to pay attention to.
Now, I will want to say something to that. Other than Oregon, every single team that has faced Ohio State has played them in a zone defense. Coming into this game, Notre Dame has played nothing but man. They play man with 2 high safeties. Now, my question to you guys is, do they take a play out of Texas and Tennessee's book and maybe use a little bit of their defense in this game? Because if you watch the Texas game, they were bracketing Jeremiah Smith with 3 corners, safeties, whatever, and that was all game. Did he not do good? He didn't have a great game compared to the rest of the ones, but you look at the running backs, you look at Emeka Egbuka, Carnell Tate, he dropped that touchdown, but everyone else went off. So it's a pick your poison type of thing. You gotta, in my opinion, you look at it as Notre Dame's a lot stronger of a run defense than they are a pass defense. And so I think you look to stop Ohio State on the ground and limit their weapons through the air. And I think that gives them the best chance. Try to get to Will Howard as much as you can. The more pressure you put on him, the more mistakes he's going to make. Look what happened the first play of the Penn State game. He threw a pick 6.
And Freddie, I think you're definitely the guy to ask in this scenario. Being the power that Ohio State is, schematically, how do you give Notre Dame a chance in this? How do you knock off a premier talent, a premier program in Ohio State?
I think Notre Dame has to utilize their running game. They have a really good running back, and I think they have to utilize that as from the get-go. And then as far as defensively, they have to neutralize Jeremiah Smith, and they have to stop the run. I mean, Ohio State has two really good running backs, and I don't know what their coach is thinking about when he goes to sleep at night, but those two guys back there, I would be thinking about them a whole lot because they're a problem. Quinshon Judkins and Henderson, they're both really good players.
That sets up the entirety of Ohio State's offense, and I think that's why we're going to see more of a loose game from them, Ohio State, or than Notre Dame, pardon me. Because, look, Notre Dame, you're somewhat built off of the option and off the play action, right? Because obviously you have a quarterback who can really get moving on the ground in Riley Leonard, and a running back, obviously, that moves with the best of them. But these are two teams that are very pace heavy. They like to really kill you on the ground, right? Have those 6-7 minute drives. And I think it's two teams with a relatively similar play style. Do you see that in any way?
Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit similar, but the way I look at this game is I look at it as Ohio State's offense versus Notre Dame's defense. That's what it's going to come down to. It's going to come down to, as one of the best receivers on Ohio State said, it was actually Carnell Tate, not Emeka Ibuka, but he said, you got to win in the phone booth. That just means winning your one-on-one battles, winning in the trenches, winning as wide receivers. You're going to have the one-on-one coverage. Maybe not if you're Jeremiah Smith, but if you're Emeka Ibuka, Carnell Tate, you're going to have one-on-one coverage. You got to win those matchups. Vice versa, if you're Notre Dame, you got to win those matchups just as much. And offensively, for them, you mentioned Jeremiah Love. He's had a touchdown every single game in the regular season. The other thing I'll be looking for is Jaden Greathouse for Notre Dame's offense. He's the receiver. He's their number one right now. I'm looking for him to go up against Davison Igbenyosa. He's the quote-unquote worst defensive person for Ohio State. He's got 18 penalties over the past 2 seasons, most of those being pass interference. So I look for them to attack him a little bit, and then obviously Notre Dame has to stop the run. I think if they can't stop Quinshon Judkins, if they can't stop Travion Henderson, it's not going to happen. It doesn't matter what they do through the air if you can't stop them on the ground.
And we talked about they have to do this. They got to do that. I'll turn to you, Jake, first and ask what is going to happen, in your opinion. All the information sitting in front of you, Notre Dame team taking on an Ohio State team that has seemingly been there time and time again. What happens? Who gets it done?
Obviously, I'm going to be going with Ohio State. I'll go ahead and give my final score. I think it's going to be 35-17 Ohio State, and here's why. So coming out of the first quarter of every single game, Ohio State has had the lead in the playoffs, And so you look at that against Oregon, they were up 34-0. Against Tennessee, they were up 21-0 in the first quarter. Against Texas, they finally had a challenge. They were pushed back. They had to fight in that fourth quarter. It was a one-score game. Quinn Ewers had the ball on the 15-yard line. Jack Sawyer made that play. The defense came up big, and they won that game when it mattered. In a close one, I'm taking Ohio State, but I don't think this one's going to be a close one. Fun fact for all of you college football fans, the average margin of victory in the national championship game since the beginning of the college football playoff era is 20.1. So that's something to take into account. College football playoffs, no stranger to some blowouts. We've already seen quite a few in these playoffs, but I wouldn't be surprised to see Ohio State win big.
And Freddie, I'll turn to you. Obviously, Ohio State, a big betting favorite in this game. They have a lot of weapons, but Notre Dame, coached by Marcus Freeman, has seemingly just put the performances where they needed to be when they needed to be. Can Notre Dame play timely football and get this win? I don't mean to talk you into a Notre Dame win, but what are you thinking?
I'm thinking that the only way that Notre Dame does win is if they go out there and they play amazing defense and completely take those wideouts out of the game, because, I mean, you can stop the run all you want to, but at the end of the day, to stop those two running backs, you're going to have to load the box, and loading the box puts you in man-to-man coverage. So if those defensive backs are willing to get in the phone booth like Caden said, and, Jaden said, and, do that, then I think they will win. But personally, I think this is a 24-32 score. I think Ohio State takes it home. I think it is a close game. I think they do try and fight, but I think the Buckeyes, I think they walk away with this one.
I think you made a good point earlier talking about offensive lines, and that's going to dictate the run game. The run game is going to dictate the way that this thing plays out. And realistically, when you look at Ohio State, I mean, a two-headed monster in their running game. Will Howard is no stranger to tucking the football and getting it going, and then you have an entire passing game built off of that. I love the Notre Dame defense, but they have not been tried with Oregon. They have not been tried with even Tennessee. I feel like to this point they've been able to rely on their defense and score just over 20 points a game, and I don't think you can do that against Ohio State. I think Ohio State goes in putting up 3 scores in the first half at least. I feel like this game ends up in the 30s for Ohio State, and I don't think Notre Dame is going to be able to catch them on that front, you know. And I look even deeper into this game. If it is close, Notre Dame at some point, Riley Leonard is going to have to put together a drive where he throws the football down the field through a treacherous Ohio State defense. Yeah. And guys, I know we haven't talked the best about Riley Leonard this season, and he's really shut us up and played amazing football. But I don't know if there's a quarterback in the United States of America that can go through the Ohio State defense and really go win a football game, especially on this level.
Yeah, I mean, he did throw for over 200 yards against Georgia, so that's something to keep in mind. But we're looking at a banged-up team. And speaking of banged up, that's something that usually I like to drop after you make your pick, that little tidbit that makes the difference. Well, Notre Dame's starting left tackle, he is not going to be playing. Anthony Knapp, he is out with a sprained ankle or a rolled ankle. Not big of a difference, but he's not going to be playing tonight. And on top of that, their right tackle, he's also a little banged up, but he will be suiting up to play. So if it's going to be one in the trenches, being hurt's not going to help anything. So I think that gives Ohio State a little bit of an advantage there. But I think where Notre Dame really has the advantage is in the turnover margin. They coming into this one, they're the number one in forcing turnovers. They have the number one scoring defense in all of college football. So that's telling you they're getting a lot of pick sixes. They're getting a lot of kick returns like we saw against Georgia. So you look at this defense, I think there's a chance that they can make Will Howard make mistakes, and that is how you win the game if you are Notre Dame. You got to make Will Howard throw an interception, force a fumble against Travion Henderson, something to make it not normal for Ohio State. Get them out of their comfort zone. That's where you finally have a chance to win if you're Marcus Freeman.
I mean, I couldn't agree more. I would say that if Riley Leonard, puts a point of emphasis out there that he's going to go out there and complete passes and he's going to attack that secondary in Ohio State, and then that defense comes out there and plays shutdown football, I think they do have an opportunity.
It'll be interesting. I can't wait to see it. I'm glad that we got together. I'm glad that we were able to break down what's happened so far to get to this point, and I'm happy to see it kind of come to fruition. We have a lot in store tonight. Freddie, thank you for your analysis today. Jake, thank you for your analysis today. I mean, all we can do now is sit back and watch this game. And could we go final scores one more time? What did you think?
I'm going to go 35-17 Ohio State.
35-17 Ohio State.
24-32 Ohio State. So pretty close one.
Got you. I'm thinking somewhere right around 38-24 Ohio State.
Okay.
38-24 Ohio State. That's where I'm at. For everyone at home, let us know, were we right, were we wrong? I don't know how much I've been wrong. I know we were wrong on this one, but I'm feeling pretty confident about tonight's pick. That's for sure. Ohio State, Notre Dame, that's tonight. This has been Last Call. Thank you for tuning in. Freddie Hawthorne and Jake Helton by my side. Have a great night.